On our left-hand side, it is Mara Faris. Been
Beautiful
dominating.
altars already.
Yeah, already out there. See an altered Dromai. That Storm of Sandakai ready to go. Going to be one of the best-looking decks we see all day. Of course, I don't want to leave Florin-Cristian Loghin out of the conversation. Runner-up at the first-ever Pro Tour. Of course, losing famously to Pablo Pintor, was a Bravo star-of-the-show player.
I'm glad you mentioned Pablo Pintor winning that tournament. He started at 0-2 in that Pro Tour and then ran the tables.
Yes, he did.
He's doing the same thing here this weekend, by the way.
I would not count him out. One of the fiercest mental games I've ever seen out of a player. And here we see Mara starting things off with these Seekers equipments. Now, these Seekers mitts kind of looked at as a throwaway by a lot of players, limited fodder, but Dromai picking them up very happily, using them to go ahead and filter some of those reds through on early turns and just make that critical ash. And that's going to allow our first dragon to come down. It is, in fact, Kyloria going to be the play for Mara Faris.
Yeah, and this is one of the ones that I like. For everybody at home, if you know what Snatch does, this is just a Snatch on a stick.
Living Snatch.
Yeah, this one, if it hits, it's going to draw an extra card. So this is a really good threat to present early in a game or anytime in a game because it's just going to be such a problem for Lexian. Do you have any history in this matchup? How do the arrows usually fare against dragons?
You know, it's so funny. I actually played this matchup a bunch as part of working with some players who were doing Pro Tour prep for this event. And I was the Dromai player. I felt pretty helpless, honestly. I really think things turned somewhere in this matchup where Lexi got a significant edge. Having said that, though, one of the things I find about Dromai players, their game planning is so strong because they have to play games in unorthodox fashion. So someone like Mara, who's just played this hero to death, knows everything about it. She's going to have access to tricks that I, as a absolute smooth brain, do not have access to. And I have all the faith in the world that she has a strong plan headed into this Lexi matchup.
Yeah, and if she wants to get that coveted spot in the top 8, she's got to go through Florin-Cristian Loghin, like you mentioned, no slouch himself, tons of experience and success on the Pro Tour stage, trying to become one of those few people with multiple Pro Tour top 8s himself. So a lot on the line here in this match. The person who wins it is going to have, a very easy road, one of the easier roads to make the top 8 from here, only a few more wins. The person who loses is going to have their back against the wall.
Yeah, and Florin starting things off with a flurry of arrows. It is going to be an infecting shot. Look, a blue go-again infecting shot being popped off with here.
Yeah, coming in for 3. Mara does have an arsenal here and a full hand of cards. Yeah, she wants to play this.
Mara's list definitely leans aggressive. Very focused on...
Just tons of dragons.
Yeah, burn them all, blaze headlong, some of those power attacks.
Did you say blaze headlong?
Yeah, blazing hedgehog, sorry.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Come on, Brian.
I'm a little rusty.
It's been a while.
Has been a while since I had the blazing hedgehog out there. But obviously a very huge red focus from Mara. And what that does mean is there is some vulnerability to frostbites from Lexi. However, we know these Lexis are trending towards fuseless. So the actual construction of Florin's deck going to matter a lot here. Are there things like ice quakes? Are there ways to go ahead and give those frostbite tokens? And just taking a quick look through the list, not so much. We do have the 2 Arctic Incarcerations that are often featured in this matchup. But on the whole, a very, very low focus on these sort of disruptive arrows. Instead, looking to do things like drill shot, hit those critical breakpoints, and get some damage out there.
Need to get some damage out there. 3 was taken from the first arrow. Blood Rot, Fox token taken over there. Drill shot's going to go ahead and come through as well.
This is a nice hit here for Florin. So
yeah, as I say, we got to put the -1 on the Skullcap here, something we haven't seen in a while. So yeah, I see that come back.
No, it is nice to see Skullcap make an appearance here. And look, Skullcap's defensive value is still very high. However, drill shot working against that. And I believe there's a drill shot with an aim counter. So it also picked up piercing 1. Meant that Mara didn't have the option to throw something like a Flamescale Furnace or that Skullcap itself in front of it.
Now, Mara kept a lot of the cards in her hand. You can see why. This is a red Rake the Emperors. This is going to get her #1 plan here going. Yeah, we're going to have dragons possibly coming in, but we've got some ash created here as well. So they're going to have that turn in some Aether Ash Wings. And this is the beginning of what Mara wants to do. Just puts lots of permanents into play. It looks like Burn Them All is going to activate a Furnace here as well.
Nourishing Emptiness.
Oh, this is a big one here, too.
And I think we're good to go on this Nourishing Emptiness. It is going to go ahead and dominate on this turn and come in for 6. So a big pickup for Mara to start things off. And also, I'll tell you, one of the things I do really prioritize here is getting those Ash Wings out because the Lexi decks have become very good at cleaning up the big dragons. They have Endless Arrow. When Endless Arrow hits, goes back to hand, they can just pop it through their Voltaire multiple times per turn, give it go again, and clean up some of those big dragons. But if you get wide enough with Ash Wings, it no longer becomes efficient to invest your resources, your Endless Arrows, into cleaning those up. And I think that's a big step towards Mara taking control of this game, is to get nice and wide with those Ether Ashwings.
Yeah, it feels almost like the Prism problem back in the day when you used to have those spectral shields all over the place, and some of the decks had problems just picking off a bunch of, little 1/1s, pretty much. These 1-power things, ash, whatever's made out of them on the board, taking care of stuff, so it can be a little bit of a problem. And speaking of problems, this Nourishing Emptiness is definitely one that I hate being attacked by this early in a game, because the first one is just so devastating when it happens.
Dominate, tough for Lexi to deal with. Obviously, that equipment, not great at blocking.
You don't really want to block with it early either.
All Blade Break, all stuff that you want to stick around for an extended period of time.
Yeah, New Horizons not one that you want to throw away willy-nilly too early. Really takes away from your main game plan. I think we're cleaning up the tokens here for the players at home, just so y'all know exactly what's going on. So there we go. We got the Blood Rot pot.
Yeah, I believe that was one of the Team Poland, always very kind and brings over.
I have a full set of them myself.
Custom, beautiful tokens for us every single time we have a Pro Tour. I think that was one of those beautiful tokens. And while I appreciate the aesthetics, we'll keep things a little bit clearer for y'all so you can identify that Blood Rot pot out there. Of course, given by that last infecting shot. And Florin really struggling with blocks here. Going to go ahead and just put a Bolt-in shot in front of the Nourishing Emptiness. That is going to go through for 3. More critically, though, Mara's intellect increase. I already thought Mara was very brilliant, but now moving up to 5 intellect on this turn. What's going to have a big grip here.
What's the opposite of a smooth brain?
Wrinkly brain. Wrinkly brain.
So very wrinkly brain for Mara here on this turn. One of the things that you almost never see in this game, gaining intellect for a turn. Super rare. So look, you're going to see.
Let's count them out, though.
5
cards. Love to see it for Mara.
Going to a 6-card hand next turn, possibly for Mara.
And Mara's built very adept at taking advantage of those hands, able to go wide, able to go ahead and create multiple dragons on a turn. So I wonder if we're going to see Mara just go ahead and soak some damage here and try and get back with a big turn. Florin, we know, 3 cards in hand, 1 card in arsenal, so not at peak Lexi performance right now, but that can always change very quickly. Cards like 3 of a Kind, Codex can sort of blow up out of nowhere.
FCL taking his time here this turn, kind of shaking his head, wondering if he's not loving the situation that he's in. He's got a little bit of a life lead, but that's not always indicative of who's actually in the lead of the games.
Correct.
And I've got to feel like he feels he's under pressure a little bit here for these Aether Ashwings, that Nourishing Emptiness last turn, because he knows Mara has cards either throw away to block here very easily, or the next turn is going to be very impressive from her if she goes in with 5 or 6 cards.
Yeah, and I think that was a bit of a curveball for Florin. You don't really expect to see a ton of those effects. So now a very critical card here flipped up by Florin. It is the Soul Down and Dirty in the deck, and this is a card I've seen a lot of Lexis pick up, and I think correctly so, in combination with something like Codex of Frailty, can just go ahead and be recycled multiple times. Down and Dirty, of course, allowing you to block from Arsenal, breaking the fundamental rules of Flesh and Blood, but critically doing so as a 6-power attack, and that means that is a Phantasm Popper ready to go ahead and clean up Mara's turn, just steal the turn from her out of nowhere.
Yeah, we talk about the big power cards, 3 of a kind, Codexes in this matchup. I think Down and Dirty is almost at that level, if not at that level, in exactly, some of these matchups where it can be a popper as well.
Yeah, Winner's Bite, also the player from Florin, so a very defensive turn from Florin.
This is what the shake of the head was about. I think he had no arrows in his hand or anything like that, so he's just going to go ahead and set up from here. And yeah, that Down and Dirty is face up, but you got to do what you got to do here. We do have a face-down card for him now, so that double arsenal is in play. He's got 4 cards in his hand, but this is why the head shake was happening. Mara is fully equipped here.
Yeah, it's so funny, Tannen. Down and Dirty, when it was previewed during preview season, kind of met with a whimper. In fact, one of my favorite podcasts, the Arsenal Pass podcast, was the one to preview that card. They weren't that excited about it, and me personally, I think Down and Dirty is a wild card to introduce to the game. It just breaks rules left and right, and adding that Phantasm Popper at Arsenal, that's a real big deal.
And speaking of snatches, here's an actual snatch from Mara. This is a red one. It's going to get blocked for 3, so the hit is going to happen, but there was an attack reaction there. The Snapdragon Scalar's going to get popped. Mara doing some work with her equipment and armor here early in the game.
Yep.
And can't blame her. Ton of cards in hand. Wants to get another one here. Wants to see as many cards as possible. Put this game in a situation where it's going to be so far behind for FCL that he's not going to be able to come back from this firing, 1 or 2 arrows a turn.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting spot from Mara. She needs to be able to go ahead and get a power turn out of this situation with the increased intellect, but can't do so while exposing herself to that Down and Dirty in Arsenal. And thankfully she knows about it. She's not going to be surprised by it, and that is influencing her card selection very much here. And you see a great answer to Down and Dirty. It is Command and Conquer coming out for Mara Faris that's going to demand some answers from FCL.
And the extra card drawn from the Intellect earlier and the card from Snatch looming very large here because of a deck having so many red in it and having Command & Conquer 2 cards had to be pitched for this. But Mara's got extra stuff in spades here. She's got tons of extra resources, tons of extra cards. You see the triple block from Florence here this turn, and Mara's still got cards left over to put in the arsenal as well. We're going to go back over to FCL. Going to put that Spring Tunic up to 2. He's got a card left, I believe, in hand, the 2 cards in arsenal, but with the way that the last turn was, I wonder how good this turn could possibly be as well.
Yeah, really prioritizing protecting that down and dirty. I don't blame him. That represents a virtual extra turn for Florin, able to go ahead and steal. And you see another 6-power attack in Florin's deck. I believe there's only a grand total of 4. We have seen 2 of them thus far. It is a red Death Touch coming out for FCL.
And yeah, I think we saw one of those pop early in the game as well. I think from one of the blocks of the dragon here, but it does look like this is a Death Touch coming
Command
into the
and
attacks.
Conquer also in the list, so has access to, I believe now, 5 poppers.
I guarantee you Mara's got more than 5 dragons in the deck. So they're
probably correct. There's literally 4 right out there in the arena presently. So there's going to be way more dragons throughout this game.
So the popper's going to be working overtime here. Looks like we have a block of one of those dragons as well from here. That is Thamai.
Thamai going to play a little defense.
One of my personal favorites, by the way.
Okay.
I believe that was actually Diem Armada's preview card. It was absolutely beautiful, and it's going to be met with a defensive reaction behind as well to soak up all of this damage. And a card is actually going to be sunk to the bottom of the deck for Mara, a little card selection as well.
Clean block of that Death Touch. Let's see again how Mara wants to approach this turn. Has to be cognizant of that down and dirty.
So I've got to feel like this game's been going pretty well for Mara so far. It feels like, she's a little bit ahead, and FCL's been struggling a little tiny bit from here. Is it, something that can turn on dime, say if he draws one of those kind of big power cards, like you said, 3 of a kind, or is he starting to fall maybe a little too far behind?
No, I think he's completely fine. I think he's playing this game at a slower pace and, has found some defensive tools early that allow him to do so. Has that, down and dirty at the ready. But there's a very key play here from Mara. It is time for Miragi, and that matters a bunch in the face of that down and dirty. Of course, Miragi able to go ahead and stop that Phantasm Popper, at least on the first attack per turn.
Yep.
So it's going to go ahead and rumble here, headed in with no fear of down and dirty.
And so when this one attacks, there's no Phantasm on the first dragon here this turn. So like you said, down and dirty, not going to be a great block here, but it looks like a Bolt Shot's going to come out and block, and then here comes the Horde.
Yeah, and this is a fine example of wrinkly-brained play, right? Knowing that down and dirty is there and just presenting tough decisions for Florin. Like, sure, you can steal this turn now if you'd like, Florin. It's going to cost you your only down and dirty, and you better hope at that point you have some ways to rebuild it. And look, Florin does. There's 3 Codex of Frailties in this list. I don't think that's going to be the last time we see that down and dirty this game, but Mara very carefully protecting the key dragons from it and forcing Florin into tough spots.
I had to go back into my smooth brain myself here and remember, I called it a Horde. If I remember correctly, a group of dragons is called a Thunder.
Gaggle. Yes,
no, I think
gaggle.
it's a Thunder.
No,
it's not a Gaggle.
A gaggle of dragons.
You're definitely wrong.
A dumpster of dragons.
A brooding of dragons? Is that too much?
No, it's a dumpster.
Okay.
Sure. Unfortunately, dragon going to be cleaned up by an infecting shot, and you see Florin having to balance things. You have to go ahead, clean up the dragons, pressure life totals. You got to do it all at the same time. So it makes Dromai very, very challenging to play against, and it shows when a master of Dromai is playing the deck, it puts you into uncomfortable positions. That's the name of the game in Flesh and Blood. Make your opponent uncomfortable. Do things that they don't expect. Alter their play patterns. That's always what you're looking to do as a Flesh and Blood player.
Another dragon being added here. Yet again, that's another. You call it Miragi? Is that how you pronounce it?
Mr. Miragi.
Yeah, it's Mirror Guy to me.
No, it's Mr. Miragi. Tenon, I don't know what you're getting wrong about this. It's a dumpster of dragons. It's Mr. Miragi. This is all very clear. Did you not read the show notes I prepared for you?
There's notes?
There are detailed notes. And Mr. Miragi going to rumble in 4-2 here. We know that down and dirty cleared, but no Phantasm on this Miragi. If this
Mara Guy? Is that a better?
Miragi.
But it looks like it is going to be blocked by an arrow here, though. Still, Mara wants to follow this up. Looks like she may be playing another card from hand.
Pathing Helix, it's defense. None of those giant arrows in Florin's list, things like Battering Bolt, the lone 6-power arrow.
The Billowing Sands here is going to make another Ash.
Yeah, Mara very content. Just go ahead and create as many of these Ether Ashwings as possible. And this is where those damage numbers are going to start piling up. This one coming in for 4, a
Yeah.
large attack here.
This one buffed a little bit, going to be coming in for 4, like you said. And I wonder if that down and dirty was there still, if that one would have gotten met with a popper here.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just good tempo, way to prevent a good amount of damage. But unfortunately, Down and Dirty has been used, was not rebought with anything like a Codex. So these dragons are just going to be free to dumpster across the arena and go ahead and damage.
Yeah, it looks like the Thunder has come in quickly here, down to 29 for FCL here, and looks like this is going to get faulted. Is that a breaking point?
I believe it is a breaking point, and we do have Rupture here, so breaking point doing its thing. Again, just strange cards from Mara. Maybe not the typical selection, but she knows this deck so well and preparing for things like a heavily arsenaled Lexi very well with this breaking point, a virtual Command and Conquer coming in.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's coming in 5 for 1 here is huge, but this is going to force such a huge block out of Florin-Cristian Loghin.
Florin again.
Yeah, this is another thing of what Mara's deck can do. You know, it is that almost all that red line here, but you're getting so many copies of Command and Conquer here, and I think this is great. It's almost like they knew that the archers were coming, right?
Yeah.
That they knew cards like this were coming, and we're getting more and more tools with which to fight that from these decks to help make sure. It looks like Drill Shot's going to go ahead and take out that Mirror guy, but the 4 Ether Ashwings still left along.
Yeah, and Mara's life total not being pressured here. All these arrows being committed to these dragons, and rightfully so. I'm not criticizing FCL's approach to the matchup. You have to control those dragons, but this is one of the advantage Dromais have into this matchup. They need to go ahead, create that arena presence, and of course, Mara very successful at that thus far. Time for Chromai to come down, and how about Asvalai as well? So a couple of dragons joining the fray here, and a fine Marvel Chromai and Asvalai replacing those very lowly common versions of the card. Ravenous Rabble also kicking things off here, revealing a red. Of course, this is about to be a very wide turn for Mara, and Florin really needs to find a popper here, otherwise it's going to be under a lot of threat.
Yeah, Ravenous Rabble coming across for 4 here. Mara doing her best impression of one of my favorite games from the 90s. I'm really going to date myself here. A little double dragon here this turn for Mara Faris, and so much pressure.
Dragon is from the 80s.
You know what? As soon as I said that from the 90s, I actually thought about it. I was like, I'm pretty sure this game came out in the 80s. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was probably playing it in the 80s too, actually, just to date myself even more.
One of my first memories in an arcade was playing Double Dragon on a stand-up arcade cabinet. Kids, an arcade cabinet is a thing where you go
you
put something called a quarter. That's currency. You put it into a little slot, and then you get to play the game for a limited period of time.
And then somebody else could come up and play along with you if they wanted to as well, or against you.
Yep. A fascinating time we lived in back then.
Usually involved a steady diet of potato chips, Mountain Dew, and whatever version of really loud music was being pumped through the stereo at the time.
Absolutely. These dragons doing work now. Florin's life total rapidly being deteriorated under the pressure of Asvalai, Chromai, and the rest of the Ether Ashwing bunch. And Mara's arena starting to get very wide here. And there's no real flash comeback mechanism for Florin. Once you start building up this army of dragons, it's very hard to come out of it. This is as good as it gets, quite frankly. This Endless Arrow is going to go ahead and clean up both of the large dragons here. So taking down 2 dragons in a turn at good card economy, very successful turn for Florin there. Still those threat of the Ashwings, though, out and ready to empower Mara's next turn. And let's keep in mind, too, Florin invested a lot of offense here. That's 8 virtual points of damage he decided to put towards those dragons. But yet, no cards were claimed from Mara's hand or life point. And this is just, again, that progressive advantage you get as the Dromai player.
Yeah, Mara's going to go ahead and use the Furnace plus a card from hand to block here and block out that damage. Another -1 counter going on to some of these equipment here. Keeping that life total high, I think Mara's looking to push her advantage while she has it, be able to keep cards in her hand for as long as she can. Because you've seen how hard it is for FCL to come back from these board states where dragon just keeps happening these turns. And I was about to ask you last turn, how does he get out of this? And I was about to, as you see, it starts with an Endless Arrow. Yeah. That's what they need the most.
Yeah, it's one of the best catch-up mechanisms you can have. But unfortunately, you see, just right after this, Mara's rebuilt. Billow and Mirage coming back down. More dragons out there at the ready. We're now up to 5 of those Ashwings, I believe, ready to go. So just so much persistent damage being represented out there in the arena for Mara.
Yeah, you can see that this Billing Mirage is an attack here for 3. Behind that, you've got the Mirror guy, 5 Aether Ashwings. Florin-Cristian Loghin trying to figure out how to get out of this from here. He's already down 10 life points as well, 31 to 21 in Mara's favor. Go ahead and consult the cards that have already been played this game, and I say this: we've seen a lack of 3 of a kind and a lack of codex from here.
If you're Florin, you just have to be thinking, where are my power cards? 3 of a kind, not even the card I'm actually particularly interested in this spot. I think you really just need those codexes to get that down and dirty back into Arsenal. That's how you come back into this game. And unfortunately for Florin, they're just not floating to the top of the deck thus far.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be one of the ways that Lexi really floats around in this matchup, right? You get the down and dirty cycle 3, you get the endless arrows to pick off the dragons as much as possible. And, he's found half of that equation. He needs to find the other half. It looks like one of those arrows is going to come from hand, block the Billowing Mirage.
Blocking.
Here comes the 2-power dragon coming in, Mirror Guy coming in for an attack on Florin-Cristian Loghin. He's doing some math here, some creative accounting. He's got to feel a little bit of pressure here. He's going to go ahead and take the 2, and I think that means that all gates are open for the 5 behind this.
Just
here's
dumpster
1, here's
dragons
4.
one more time coming through, representing 5 damage turn after turn.
We're not going to let that go, are we?
No, that's here forever.
Okay. Just so I know that I have to deal with that from now on.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for that. All right,
you might be dealing with it a lot if Mara continues on this torrid pace.
Hopefully for her, we are.
Yeah. There is an endless arrow at the ready for Florin, though. That's a big deal. Going to be able to clean up more dragons with that. And then we see a Codex pitch for the first time. It is going to be endless arrow going to work on these dragons, and you understand why this is how you can dig your way out of it. But unfortunately, things have gotten very wide on Mara's side of the arena. And if you're Florin, you just have to ask, when can I start attacking my opposing player?
Yeah,
how long do I have to attack these dragons for?
Yeah, when was the last time Mara took damage?
It's been a while.
I feel like it's been a while. Since turn 1 almost.
Look, Florin has double Endless Arrow. That's a really nice spot to be in. These cards are efficient, effective. You get to use them over and over and over, but it's just not doing enough. Mara's doing more per turn. You're winning on action economy if you're Mara. Premeditate going to go ahead, and now we are firing an arrow off at Mara, trying to get that Ponder token.
Yeah, attacking for 7 here since it's coming out of the arsenal. It does have go again as well.
And this is giving Mara a little bit of pause. She's thinking about defensive options. Does she want to try and deny that Ponder potentially?
Yeah, one of the first real attacks that's happened to her since turn 1, I think, of the game. So it looks like she's going to go ahead and take that 7. She's built up quite a nice life lead here in this game, Brian. So this maybe allows her to make this kind of play.
Yeah, it's one of the advantages you get as sort of like the leading player. If you have that life discrepancy, you're able to lean into it and just take a turn where you don't have to defend and just try and offer some offense.
See that endless arrow. Let's see if it stays in hand or if it goes to Arsenal here at the end of the turn. How does he want to resolve this Ponder, I think, is a big question.
Yeah, there is going to be the Ponder first, so should get another option for Arsenal here.
Yeah, FCL taking his time. Can't blame him. Backspin against the wall these last about 7 turns, it feels like, in this game. Just been on cleaning duty, pretty much. But that was his first real big swing for a while in this game. Get himself back into it just a little bit. The life total is a little bit closer now, only a 10 difference here. Mara at 24, FCL at 14. And man, are we really pondering here this turn.
Yeah, having a good think. I'm curious exactly what Florin is debating. It could be something like extending this turn. I'm not sure if that last arrow, that last arrow must have had go again. So maybe we're debating like tracking Snapdragon Scalers here and coming back with another endless arrow. Do you just want to try and use these resources while you can?
Looks like he's just going to go ahead and chip in that 4. Mara down to 20. Like those getting even closer. Hand is constructed of 2 endless arrows here. Look like the Ponder token's going to go ahead and pop.
Yeah, so I think what Florin was actually debating is just leaving that card and trying to play a 6-card hand on the next one. Now you only have access to a 5-card hand with a single arsenal.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of options there. Like, where do I put the second endless arrow? Do I leave one of them face up in the arsenal? How do I want to resolve my Ponder here? And this is what he came up with. Looks like one of those dragons is going to get used here to play a Billowing Mirage.
Yeah, Billowing Mirage again. Again, no Phantasm vulnerability on this turn thus far, meaning that if Florin does happen to have one of the few poppers in deck, there are not that many of them, is going to have to commit one to an Ashwing. Not exactly what you want to do as far in terms of efficiency if you're in Florin's seat.
You know, like you were talking about, there aren't a ton of poppers in FCL's deck. You know, it doesn't have a ton of 6-power things. There's enough, and Mara has done an amazing job this game, in which I'm assuming she does in all of her games, of playing around that as much as possible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she knows exactly what she's doing.
You know,
and
avoiding the worst-case scenarios.
Yep, you want to avoid the blowout. You're going to get dragons pop. That's just how these matchups go. But you need to time the popping, understand when it's going to happen.
Morsel's going to come out and block. It looks like we're going to have an attack for 4 here from a Ravenous Rabble. Like, Amara just immediately puts the 4 before revealing the card. She's like, my deck's all red. Let's be real.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not going to be a problem to hit a red here.
So those attacks have been blocked a little bit. Florin down to 13, and All right, here comes the dumpster. God, that feels just
Thank
so
you.
wrong.
Dumpster of Dragons coming through. Does Florin have a popper? Does he want to steal this turn back? If he does, you see Mara pausing on this first attack. She knows this is the moment of vulnerability. This is where Florin can go ahead and close off that chain.
Maybe a little bit of tell here with FCL taking this long, but maybe it's a little bit of a reverse tell as well. Maybe trying to act like he's got a 6.
Sure, that's part of the game here. You have to represent all options.
There's a lot else going on in the head here, too. It's not just, hey, do I want to take this? How do I want to play this turn back? It looks like he's going to take all of it down to 7, and I've got to be a little worried because I think there's at least 6 of those Aether Ashwings left over, and you're at this kind of life total.
Yeah, you start looking at kind of flying Kodachis. As
I was just going to say, this is like what we've called since day one. This is like Kodachi lock.
Yep.
You know?
Very, very scary position to be in if you are Florin. Does have Endless Arrow still at the ready.
This can help clean up this quite a bit. Looks like the Spring Tunic is going to go ahead and pay for this. Voltaire getting activated. Second Endless Arrow.
That one going to be blessed, assuming with some go again here.
What happens when you have an Endless Arrow and then you add Endless Arrows to Endless Arrows? So there's just Endless Arrows to the second power?
Infinite arrows.
Well, did you technically already have, is Endless and Infinite different? I'm not a math major or a math scientist.
We already established that my brain is without wrinkles, and I will not be answering this question.
Sure. I'm sure someone on Twitter will let me know. But it looks like this first one's going to come in for 7, and I got to believe this is going at Mara.
You have to think so. That premeditate backing it up, allowing the chance for a ponder token and a potential big follow-up turn from Florin. You see Mara taking a look at the graveyard right now, understanding what's been used, what power cards are still out there. We did see a Codex of Frailty pitched on a previous turn. We have not seen any 3 of a kinds thus far.
Mara taking her time, considering here, how does he want to block? How does she want to get out of this? Does she want to block? Still got those 20 life points to play with here, but there's more Endless Arrows behind this, and you don't want to play too loose with your life total here and get yourself in a situation where, now I need to start blocking, and I'm in a bad spot. Because you can see, I think FCL has figured out one of the only ways he's going to win from here is I've just got to go upstairs and hope it's good enough that I can race.
Look, Lexi's an explosive deck. She can put out turns of incredible output out of nowhere. So Mara does have to respect that, has to think about limiting Florin's output. You can consider something like a 2-card plus a Furnace block here. I think that's reasonable given what this Endless Arrow represents. Maybe get one of these Endless Arrows out from Florin-Cristian Loghin's hand. That could be a step in the right direction. But also, if you're Mara, Florin's at 7. You just want to save everything to come back on offense next turn. Always a balancing act being done when it comes to Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I think there's more of a chance that happening for him, something like it was the turn before with, a Billing Mirage and a Ravage, some natural go-again attacks that actually have a bunch of power, plus, the dumpster of, God, it just sounds so wrong.
Yep, no, it's correct.
I'm mad that I have to say this, but the dumpster of dragons behind it, just so much going on. So, Marma having this kind of pause and this kind of thought process on it, I'm wondering if her hand is a little bit maybe more normal, filled with some dragon stuff and maybe not some of these red go-again natural attacks.
This is a big moment.
Oh, yeah, this is one of the most important turns of the game as well, yeah.
Have to be cautious.
I can really appreciate, too, how the players played. The very easy turns, the straightforward turns, we're very quickly through those. We know what's going on. And then, this turn's a little difficult. I'm going to take my time here. I'm a big fan of that in this game. Really take your time, get this turn right. It looks like the damage is going to go ahead and get through. That Ponder token
Mara says take 7, and that tells me there's probably some offensive output coming through on the next turn. And that's going to question a lot of what Florin is able to do here. Is there any disruption to be had, or is it just Endless Arrows all day? It looks like the only thing in hand is Endless Arrow coming back for 4 this go-around at Mara.
And this is part of what Mara was thinking about during that time. It wasn't just, what do I do with this first arrow? What am I going to do about the second Endless Arrow? Maybe I can block this one with a 3-block plus, my Furnace, and maybe keep this one from hitting and be in a much better spot. It looks like a break point from hand. So go again has been given to this Endless Arrow.
Yep, trying to get another attack. This coming back to hand. So just a little bit of life total preservation here from Mara, not actually trying to prevent that on-hit. Florin going to activate one more time. Endless Arrow, and that one's going face as well. I believe 4 more damage being represented. Mara says take 4.
So,
5 plus 1 from the Voltaire, of course.
So what, 16 damage represented from these 2 Endless Arrows pretty much this turn? You can
Endless
see why
Arrow is a hell of a card.
Yeah, you can see why Lexi's been so good and so dominant in this tournament.
Does Mara want to shut this one down? This is a real question. Like, if Mara can still produce the threat of those dragons, leaving Florin on the next turn with no arsenal is quite appealing to me.
Yeah, you can see I don't know if Florin loves his spot, but at least he's making headway, right? You know, the life totals are a lot closer. Mara's at 12 versus 7 here with attack 5 still looming. She's thinking about how to handle it from here. You know, you're wondering, does she have, you know, the reds requisite to make the next turn be able to attack with these dragons? I mean, and you have go again. There's a lot to consider here in this spot, and both these players are going to be playing really tight here because there's so much on the line here in this game in particular.
Oh, absolutely.
Does look like we're going to have a block.
Yeah.
2's going to get through.
Just up committed to defense. So Mara, not worried about on hits, just preserving just enough life total that she thinks she can play the game. And her goal on this turn, she needs to present lethal to Florin. She needs to go ahead and demand a little bit extra here out of Florin to ensure he can't come back with a massive hand. And I think the block really doesn't make a lot of sense there if you think about it, because Florin did have that ponder token at the ready. So denying that endless arrow, sure, you deal with endless arrow specifically, but there is always going to be an arsenal no matter what. So I like Mara's decision making here. Let's see if Florin has the tools to go ahead and steal some tempo on this turn. It is just Enlightened Strike to kick things off. So 5 go again damage coming to start the turn. And we know what's coming behind that's a full dumpster of 6 dragons.
And I wonder
1 damage at a time.
I wonder if Florin can even get out of this turn. If he does, he's not going to have a lot of cards left is the problem here. So I think you're maybe possibly seeing the beginning of the end here. These dragons really putting their weight into this game of just attacking for 1 over and over and over again. But the problem is, anyone who's ever played this game before, when someone attacks you for 1, you never want to give them a card for that, ever. It feels so bad.
The problem for Florin here is that we're seeing those 6 dragons behind. So even if you have a 3 block here, unless you have a popper, you really can't afford to take 2 because you're still being represented lethal. So you really want to do an efficient block here. The problem, though, those equipments, you're sort of relying on your New Horizons. You can maybe afford to give up Tunic
I was going to say, Tunic is probably going to get in front of something here this turn if there's not a popper to stop the dragons. Because I don't know this game's going to go 3 turns longer. You know, we talk about this all the time, is when does your Tunic become expendable?
Yeah, and I think the problem is, if you could get away here with 1 card plus Tunic on this Enlightened Strike, and then only take 6 from the dragons plus the 1 floating, you'd be in a pretty good spot. However, that's exactly 7. So now I think you're just committed to 2 cards. There's also the looming threat of that arsenal. If that's something like a Ravenous Rabble, then your math is just torn to shreds. You're
if it's
in
any
such a
zero
vulnerable position.
If it's any 0 red attack here, I don't know if FCL can get out of this turn.
No, that's the worst case scenario. And Mara's deck is absolutely lousy with those cards, by the way. So very good chance you could be facing something like that. And it looks like Florin agrees and is going to commit 2 cards, one of which looks to be a 3 of a kind. The first time we've seen it being put on defense, not exactly where you want to be here. That may be a premeditate, actually.
I think that it is a premeditated, it looks like. All right, so it looks like the dumpster dragons is going to come through.
Yep. All 6 of them coming through.
It looks like the last one's going to get soaked up by the Spring Tunic as we thought. So I think that means Christian Loghin, is he down to 2 or is he down to 1?
May have preserved at 2 there.
All right, so here comes the Endless Arrow. So 10 to 2. Mara, 4-card hand and an arsenal. If she gets a turn back, you've got to believe she's probably going to be able to find a lethal here.
Well, there's always the question of a popper, though. That's what can change the math. If Florin's able to find that popper, things can change very quickly.
All right, Rainrazor's pitched. Here comes a Bolt and Shot.
Yeah, and
it's going to go again.
Out of cards in hand, so this is a predictable turn now.
Face up. Here we go. I'm all in. You can see everything. You've got all the information. Here's a Bolt and Shot with go again because it's got more power, so it's attacking for 5. So you're going to see Mara take her time here just a second to map out the rest of this turn versus what she's going to do on her own.
Yeah, and you're starting to see a head shake from Florin there. On that turn, again, we've sort of harped on Codex, but if Florin is able to just Codex back, get that down and dirty into Arsenal, such a better position on this turn, but unfortunately not finding those key cards in this scenario. Mara says take 5. Yeah, she's measured out at this point. She knows what Florin's capable of.
As Flake would always say, send me the bill.
Yep. And this Endless Arrow does not have go again. It can be brought back to hand, but unfortunately for Florin, no way to juice this one up further. It was already an arsenal. And Voltaire not able to apply.
I don't know. Are there any pumps in play? We still see 1 resource floating. Is there any way to buff this up? If not, I mean,
no.
If she wants to keep the land, Mara could go down to 1 here, but I don't know if she wants to play it that close here. Because like you said, what if a popper comes off the top of FCL's deck there?
It's scary.
Could be a spot.
Yeah, and we are going to see
a full block almost.
Yeah, full block. I think this is the correct play. I agree 100%. Because now, even if Mara does get popped on this turn, she's still in a very strong position on the next turn.
Yeah, you're thinking from here, how do I lose from this spot? And that involves me just getting a little too flippant with my life total.
Yep.
Giving away too many free points. All right, looks like a snatch is going to get pitched here.
Yeah, so we have that red card critically pitched, and it's going to be Bellowing Mirage to start things off, and a perfect way to do so, an unpoppable attack to begin, and I'm looking through the hand, and I don't see it. I think
Yeah,
three
I
of a
don't think I
kind
see it
searing
either.
shot. I don't think this is
Oh,
going to be
no, is that
How
a
about
burn them
burn
all?
them all? No, that does solidify, and that gets the fist bump, and Mara Faris moving on to a 9-2 record, starting to put herself in prime position to make a run at that top 8 berth. Absolutely owning her title as the queen of Dromai, very much justified in getting all the support. And like I said, I started to feel like that matchup was tough on the Dromai side. Mara made it look easy, quite frankly.
Yeah, played really, really well. How thematic to end it with a burn them all as the mother of dragons as well. Just, you know what, I loved seeing, okay, so FCL's hands at the beginning could have been maybe just a little bit better. You know, he had a popper early, but like didn't have it at the critical time.